Hey there, Tank Squad released update 1.3.1 2 days ago, and it's been amazing to play. I tried to do a video a few weeks back on procedural missions, how they work, but during the recording I'd end up playing more Tank Squad and not actually making the video. So this video will be about the update as well as a couple of general tips for the systems outside of the combat and the tank sim part of the game. And if you just want to see the tips, you will find those at this timestamp. With that out the way, let's look at the biggest addition in 1.3.1, namely the Ballistic Lab. Wanted to know why that shot at 500 meters with the APHEBC didn't go through the back of the Tiger? Well, you can now recreate the scenario in the Ballistic Lab, which allows you to choose which tank to test with which weapon and at what distance and angle. No more trial and error while you figure out the differences between the armor pen of APCR or APHEBC shells. I've found a few new weak spots with this for the Tiger for my current Soviet playthrough, and it's made my life a little bit easier. The other big change is the general color palette and the contrast of the game combined with the Enviro-Sky system. What does that mean? It means the environmental and weather conditions combined with the deeper color palette make the game much less washed out and much more cinematic. In short, it's beautiful. With the Enviro-Sky component and the color palette, the cohesive lighting and volumetric sky effects work to make the world lighting and rendering work in lockstep. So fog, overcast, sunset, sunrise all leave a subtle footprint in what you see, not just in the sky but in the world, making the world much more immersive. Here is the before, and here is the after. Another great change is the gun sight and binocular lens effects. So when looking through gun sights, binoculars or the commander visor, you will see chromatic aberration, glass color, contrast differences. All in all, it adds to the immersive experience. The traces and shells seem to have been tweaked, which is really good for player feedback. Warping is also a thing now, so when the enemy fires at you, the aerodynamic shockwave is visible, which looks really cool through the gunner's sight. And one other addition is that the machine gun now shakes your screen, which is a nice touch. The other thing I found with the new procedural adjustments is the airstrikes are less spammy. So in 1.3.0, you would constantly get hounded by enemy airstrikes again and again, and it became a bit much. I had a dedicated squad called Shell Catchers that would simply be there to catch airstrikes while I went about doing my business, but they seem to have turned that down, which is a welcome addition. This might not have been a change, but I'm now able to play the Soviets in the procedural missions. Previously it felt impossible, so let me preface this quick. I understand that losing tanks while playing the Soviets is expected. If you're not losing tanks while playing the Soviets, you're playing them wrong. However, before in 1.3.0 it did seem impossible. Well, now I'm on day 8 in my Soviet playthrough and it's been great. It's still tougher than playing the Germans, but in a fun kind of way. Ambushing, peeking, flanking are all vital if you want to survive the Soviet procedural missions, and I love it. Commander now sends waves, it seems, or at least that is what I've noticed. So previously the battle would die down when you ran out of units, down to the last tank. Now it seems that motorized units are sent consistently and constantly, which keeps the battlefield flowing. It keeps it feeling alive and dynamic, and it allows you to flank, which is necessary when you're going up against the Germans. So they've got something to aim at, and you can sneak around and effectively take advantage of the distraction. And there are loads and loads of bugs and fixes and adjustments. So if you go on the Discord, you'll see a lot of PDFs and schematics and documents. There's a great feedback loop between the developers who are constantly working on the game and patching it and adjusting it, and the community. So a lot of the parameters of the tank combat are informed by historical accuracy as best as possible. So it's been great to see it, and you can see it in the game itself. So how do procedural missions work? Well, you pick a side, you start a procedural game, which is a dynamic map sequence, as well as dynamic objectives. Choose between 5, 10, 25 missions and go about getting it done. You persist your resources from one mission to the next. You start off with a limited set of resources and equipment, and you have to eke your way out of constrained circumstances. Salvage more tanks, upgrade your existing ones, and build your tank company from the ground up. This creates motivation to be invested in your game and incentivizes resource and tank preservation, so you become the better player, as losing tanks can be expensive. So with the new patch, you get emergent missions, which are uncovered as you play through that specific missions. So a mission may have 3 formal objectives that you need to accomplish, each one rewarding a specified amount of resources, but while you're carrying that out, you might stumble upon some latent or hidden AA installation, which if you take out, you get additional rewards. So it encourages exploration and taking your time to traverse the map. The first thing, if you're new to the game, play as the Germans and use the Tiger tank, as it's a lot more forgiving and it allows you to not have to hide as much. You don't need to flank or use subterfuge. You can simply angle your tank, face the shots, and take shell after shell in the face without having to worry about losing your tank. Alright, so here are a couple of general tips for playing procedural missions in Tank Squad. This is to do largely with the external systems outside the battle. If you want more gameplay tips on how to play Tank Squad while you're in your tank, see this video over here where I do a step-by-step of Luchki Airfield and where I shoot tanks and how I go about angling the Tiger tank. If you want a bit of a challenge, you can play as the Soviets. It's quite fun and requires you to take your time and think a bit more about where you're going to move and what cover you're going to take. The reason the Soviets are a bit harder to play is none of their tanks are impervious to German firepower. So on a long enough timeline, a perfectly angled KV-1 will get destroyed by an 88 or a 75mm KWAC 40. Those guns will find the weak spots on the front of the KV-1. So I'm going to take you through all the bros in the tank yard. So when you load up the tank yard in the repair bay, you're going to see lots of icons on your map, and it can be a little bit overwhelming in the beginning. So I'm going to go through each one, what they provide, and which ones are essential for your sustainable game loop. The first bro, the Recon bro, or the Recon, he's got off-site map support. He sells you airstrikes, artillery, and he exchanges these for ammo. These are all very useful, especially if you're playing the Soviets, as 150mm artillery barrages can take out things like Tigers and some of the heavier armored tanks. And these artillery barrages can disable tanks. So that's very useful if you're playing the Soviets because you're going up against a Tiger, and an immobile Tiger is easier to take out than a mobile one. So you can pick the moment and angle at which you engage if the Tiger is detreaded. Also, airstrikes are quite cheap. I tend to use them also to disable Tigers. They can detread or destroy the Tiger, but the pen is not so great, so it's a 50-50 as to whether or not an airstrike will take out a Tiger tank. And for general large open area damage, I recommend the Nebelwerfer rocket barrages for the Germans or Katyusha rocket barrages for the Soviets. These off-site support barrages are great for taking out AA site installations or any other placement destruction objectives. Now we get to infantry management, or infantry bro as I call him. This guy allows you to purchase new infantry units or replenish your existing ones after a battle. I usually use mostly heavy to light infantry for taking over a point to clear out the enemy trash. As often an objective takeover, you will encounter sneaky grenadiers or Panzerfaust or PTRS anti-tank teams that can get a sneaky shot in your weak points. Considering it can take up to a minute to turn the turret for your bigger tanks, infantry can help you clean up and preserve your 50-ton machine from sneaky shots from units on the periphery. I usually deploy them once I start taking over an objective. I occasionally use AT units to assist for disabled Tigers when I remember to. It's not critical, but it does help you clear out infantry and take out tanks at the same time. The currency that is used to buy and replenish units are your manpower points. Now this is the vehicle graveyard or graveyard management. I call him Trash Can Bro. This guy will allow you to do something very important. What he does, 2 important things for you. The first is that he sells you more recovery vehicles, which allows you to acquire more wrecks at the end of each round. At the end of each round, after each battle, you have the opportunity to choose 8 vehicles off the battlefield that you can take back home. You can either repair them or sell them or strip them for parts. This mechanic is central to resource acquisition, which will allow you to unlock more salvage trucks. More salvage trucks means more resources, which means more salvage trucks. I think you can see the picture. When you recycle units or sell them, you will get their fuel, ammo, parts. That you only get parts if you recycle, or prestige when you actually sell the wreck. So those are the two mutually exclusive parts. If you recycle the unit, you will get the parts. If you sell the unit, you will get the prestige. Tiger tanks, for example, will give you 200 prestige, even the wrecks, and you'll want to stockpile prestige to get more. You guessed it, recovery vehicles. It's a deadly but profitable feedback loop that'll get you stacks. The second thing he does is sell you wrecks, which you can repair in the yard. Per round, you can buy up to 3 random wrecks, which can be manually repaired for free. So if you're playing the Soviets, you can get KV-1s, or if you're playing the Germans, you can get Tiger tanks. That's an incredibly valuable freebie for only 50 prestige, considering that buying a Tiger tank is very expensive. If you repair tanks in this game manually, that is, you pull out your wrench or your assembly kit and you put the tank back together, it costs you nothing. So effectively you're getting a free Tiger or a free KV-1, and that's very important in the early game when you basically have very little resources to work with. You can automatically repair these units, but it will eat into your bottom line. Once you get beyond 20 recovery vehicles, you can start automatically repairing your units, given you're likely to be on the road to being loaded, figuratively and literally. The third core function that Trashcan Bro provides is that he can recycle your tanks for parts instead of the prestige you would otherwise receive for selling the unit. Prestige and parts, in my opinion, are the most important resources in the game for buying new units, repairing or converting enemy units to your side. When you repair manually, you don't spend parts. It also incentivizes the player to get to become familiar with their tanks by repairing them manually. The next unit in the yard is the Mechanic or Mechanic Bro. He allows you to upgrade or convert your captured tanks for your usage. I use Mechanic Bro to convert Tigers or KV-1s to my respective side and then use them myself. He also allows you to upgrade the units. For instance, you can upgrade the KV-1 to have a cast iron turret, which adds extra armor, which is important if you're hiding behind objects or peeking over hills. You want that extra armor on the front of a KV-1 turret. And if you're playing as the Germans and you upgrade a captured KV-1, you can put a KWAC-40 on it, which is the mobile equivalent of a PUC-40. Which is superior to the F-34. You'll get more pen with the KWAC-40. And lastly, we have the Quartermaster or Quartermaster Bro. He allows you to sell tanks and wrecks for the prestige and any resources the unit might have, except parts. When I'm on that prestige grind, I'll sell Tiger wrecks or partially wrecked tanks to this man for 200 prestige apiece to stack them for the recovery vehicles. He also has a resource exchange, so all that excess fuel you don't use can be exchanged for parts and ammo at a 2-to-1 ratio. For prestige, it's a 10-to-1 ratio, so it can be a bit harder to stack prestige for recovery vehicles. Rather get tanks through wrecks early game, as you need as much prestige as possible to get those recovery vehicles ASAP. And those are my general tips for the management side of Tank Squad. In a nutshell, the update is great and I'm looking forward to the big open world campaign that is on the way later this year, where the map sizes will range between 3x3 to 6x6 kilometer sector sizes. That's right, 6 kilometers per sector tile. This premium game is basically being given away right now at discount pricing. Price is so low it's criminal. This pricing crime scene ends on the 9th of July during the Steam summer sale, so get it while it's on. I've been enjoying this game on and off for about 8 months now, since last year November, even before all these extra bells and whistles, and it's largely because of the deeper systems that are at play and which are being expanded over time. Everything going forward is a bonus, and I look forward to the next big content release later this year. So great work, guys. The game is really shaping up and it's looking great and it's getting better and better. So until next time, cheers.